Everybody, today we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff going on in the workplaces today. And I did a session yesterday morning and it got cut short for a variety of reasons. There were some technical glitches, but I wanted to just share with you and kick this off with a quick story. My wife and I were out and about watching the NCAA basketball games, and we went to a restaurant in downtown Milwaukee with a pretty large open area and front end bar. And we were sitting at the end watching the games, and it was really amazing to us, the laissez-faire, the very complacent um, worker. Now, look, I am in no way, and I want to say the same thing I said yesterday. I in no way am an expert on depression, anxiety. That's not what I'm addressing. People who medically have been diagnosed and need help in those areas, that this is not addressing those people. And I'm watching the employees, going back to the story, and it was really amazing to me how slow they moved. And then I noticed something, and I did this for an hour. And if you ever really want to become a great leader and really become a student of people, take some time and just observe and journal. So I got a piece of paper and I started putting down slash marks. And I was counting the number of slash marks that represented the times people clustered to socially talk versus waiting on customers just at the bar area. In 60 minutes, there were more social interactions than there were waiting on customers. And I thought, maybe I'm being unfair. And my wife always says, take your darn coaching hat off. Can we just enjoy a meal and just watch the games? And it was really amazing to me because the guy next to me, a bartender, walked by and he goes, hello, hello. And the person turned and he goes, are you people waiting on anyone? Which kind of validated what I was doing. Now, his approach was a little obnoxious, but at the same time, he turned out to be a pretty good guy. And the young man who had been waiting on them and us was a great guy. And he was a really good waiter, but he was really moving from side to side from one end of the bar, which is a long bar, to the other end. And then there were a couple other employees who would cluster and just talk. Now, look, why am I bringing this up? We teach coaching. We become what we talk about. If we talk about fatigue, I'm so fatigued, we will become fatigued. If we talk about, I'm feeling so much pressure, we're going to feel pressure. We become what we talk about. There's this old cliche, and I believe in it. When the pandemic hit, I got great coaching from my business partner, Ron, because years and years and years ago during the Great Recession, he said, you have to ask yourself one question every day. Am I as good as I think I am? And will your actions support that? And I still remember that comment. That was 2008, 2008. And so when the pandemic hit, the first thing I said to myself is, how are we going to differentiate ourselves to come through this? We have to talk to ourselves. We have to have self talk. And employees today are talking about fatigue, and it's just, oh, the whole pandemic. Let me give you a second example. First of all, the pandemic has hit people, but I think we've lost sight of one thing, and that is we got to hustle. I'm at this restaurant watching these people. Nobody hustled. They work for tips, right? Their income goes up or their income goes down based on the way they treat their customers. I guarantee you the young man that waited on us, his money was going up that day. The other people, no way. The funny thing about the story was two of the people who kept clustering and talking socially, their shift ended and they go, oh, it was such a long shift. I mean, wouldn't you love to hire someone like that? Oh, it was so long. They didn't do anything. And it was evident by the couple next to me who ordered a hot fudge sundae. They kept bringing them rolled up napkins, which they pre-put together for people to, set tables with a fork and knife. They did it 3 times. Finally, the guy goes, we're having ice cream. We need a spoon. And I started laughing. It took him like 15 minutes to get this couple of spoon. I'm not making that up. And I think about a client of ours that was talking about how everyone's feeling fatigued. And I go, great. What do you do to counter that? She looked at me and she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, people are feeling fatigued. You know what you should do? And I'm being very sarcastic right now. I said, just tell them, stay fatigued. Keep yourself down. For God's sake, don't move. It doesn't work that way. You have to counter what's not going well. If someone is negative, you help them become positive. If someone is overweight, you help them become thin. If someone is hyper like me about to do a presentation, you need to calm them down. You need to help them calm them down. We need to get people taking behaviors and taking actions that demonstrate resilience. Now, I don't share this to put myself on a pedestal. I don't struggle with anxiety. I don't struggle with depression. I don't struggle with fatigue. Obviously, I'm a pretty hyper guy, but there are days that are tough, right? As an owner, but we're not in a tough business. We have great clients. We're lucky. And I think about what I do every single day. I get in here at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I will say this in front of my employees. I'll say it now. My employees don't care. They'll never put into this business what I'll put into this business, nor should they. Yet I would also share with you that this work ethic and this work habit is ingrained in me. It's a habit. Every Sunday, 6 a.m. to 12. Done it for 25 plus years. Doesn't mean I'm smarter than other people because clearly I'm not, but I will work hard. And I think about, Kobe Bryant, the great basketball player, had one of the greatest quotes. He said, the problem with today's player, before he passed away, did one of the best interviews I ever saw. He goes, is we don't work. We don't work. And a lot of people don't know this, but Kobe Bryant, I think it won an Oscar or an Academy Award for an animated film or something like that, or a documentary. And someone goes, how did you get into this? He goes, I learned about it and I worked hard, just like I did in basketball. We've lost our way with working hard. I'm going to share a concept with you that is tough for people to hear. Companies need to make money. And I want to share with you a story. I was talking to someone at one of our client sites, not one of our leaders, and the person kept complaining about upper level management. And I finally said to her, and I said, so what are you doing to overcome these times? She goes, people don't understand how hard it's been. I said, great. I get how you feel. Understand how you feel. I don't know how you feel, but I understand where you're coming from. What are you doing to counter that? He said, well, management's just not. 4 times I asked her that question. She had a complete inability, absolute inability to answer the question. I said, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to really hear me. What are you doing to counter that? What are you doing from a resilience standpoint? What are you doing to help your companies make money? Don't bring up upper level management. And she sat there. She looked around. She said, well, I don't know. I said, great. Think about what you just said. So can I have your permission to be really obnoxious and sarcastic? And she knows me well. And she said, sure. I said, for God's sake, don't do anything. Just sit there. Stay fatigued. Stay depressed. Make sure you maintain that high level of anxiety. And I know what I'm saying right now cuts deep with some people. People who are medically diagnosed, this is not reference to them. But this is about people who get caught up in this chit chat of fatigue and, oh, it's just been such a tough time. If you don't do anything to counter it, nothing happens. So it all starts with self awareness. Self awareness starts with people looking in the mirror. It sounds crazy. If you are feeling XYZ, what are you doing to counter it? If you're doing nothing, this will maintain itself. So we as leaders have got to get people up, moving around. I want to share with you a story from over 20 years ago at Evinrude Johnson. At this point, I think BRP had bought them out, and I still remember the group. I think there was Lucy and Trish and Kelly and Jack and Amy, and I worked for a gentleman by the name of Tom Wally, who was fantastic, one of the best people I've ever worked for, actually a genius in the service industry. And we didn't have a supervisor in the call center, and they had just gone through a layoff, and Tom hires me. And I remember looking at these people. I said, Tom, I've got other clients. I can't be here every day. He said, what can we do? And I said, we got to get them moving. And this is a group that went from order taking to you now got to upsell and cross sell. And you guess what they need? Guess what they were faced with? So they didn't go through another layoff. They need to help their companies make money. And people didn't want to upsell and cross sell. There was pushback. There were attitudes. There was one internal leader who said, this is not part of our job description during a layoff. That's the mentality. And this is over 20 years ago. And I remember we would have breaks and we'd have walking breaks. And, we'd have people do this like 10 times before they make a call. Do that right now with me. It's corny. It's weird. It's cliche. It's over the top. But people started to sound and feel differently. And then we had mandatory 10 to 15 minute walking breaks. Get outside in cold Wisconsin. and wake people up because we noticed at 2 o'clock our call volume went down. Lunch settled, people were yawning. And all of a sudden, motion creates emotion, and our numbers went up. Our numbers went up in 3 programs, and I believe their programs run in 6-month increments. 22, 31, and 74%. Do you know why? Nothing to do with sales training or sales coaching. We just got people feeling better. We got people moving. We got people clapping hands. We got people taking walking breaks. One week we had a group where whoever had the most high fives from people walking to the bathroom or to the lunchroom, we would count the number of high fives people got. When you're moving around, things happen. Now, look, I'm naturally a hyper guy. But if your people are feeling fatigued, they got to move. If people are feeling anxious or trepidation, fuel their minds with some fun, positive videos. Put on a comedy. See, I contend there's a right brain and a left brain, but there's really a positive brain and a negative brain. There's no neutral brain. It's one or the other. Nobody goes home at the end of the day and your spouse says, honey, how was your day? And somebody says, neutral, I didn't have a feeling from 8 to 5. It was really amazing. What we typically do is we have good days or bad days. We manically react to things. So about 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a client, kept talking about fatigue. And I said, so why are people fatigued? She said, well, the whole pandemic has just taken a lot out of us. I said, how did it take something out of you? I said, don't get mad at me. I really want to kind of dive into this because I don't want to assume yet. I kind of want to make a point, and I might be right. I might be wrong. And we continued the conversation. She just kept saying the pandemic. I said, so how did the pandemic go into each person's body and squeeze it and say fatigue? She looked at me, she goes, well, I don't know. And I said, if I gave you, let's say, um, let's say, maybe 10 minutes and each day, or maybe I gave you 3 to 4 minutes, or maybe 20 minutes a day, maybe 50 minutes a day. And she kept looking at me like, this is weird. And she goes, why are you saying that? I said, well, no, let's say I gave you 15 hours a month. Do you think that would help? And she said, yes, I do. I said, didn't we already get that working virtually? And she paused. Now, look, this wasn't about winning a discussion or winning an argument. This is about coaching people. This is about getting people to see perspective differently. It's about getting people to look at things differently. If you are tired and you know they need to be energized, would you honestly say, Andrea, just sit there, don't do anything, and you'll get energized? It doesn't make sense, right? So, what we have to do as coaches is get people to have the inclination, the insight, the creativity, the innovation when coaching people to create a counter effect. See, most people do not look in the mirror. When we talk about self awareness, I love Tasha Yurick's work. 95% of the people in her survey said they were highly self aware. When she tested them, she found out only 10% of people were somewhat aware. Think of that for a second. That is a huge, huge disparagement. So, what we have to do is we have to get people to look in the mirror and we got to introduce something that I think we've lost sight of, and that's we got to hustle. We got to hustle. And you know what? We got to be resilient. It's not a choice. I see all these things about programs, and we have our own programs on resilience and coaching resilience. Everybody should be resilient. Who in their right mind would say to an employee, for Pete's sake, just relax. Don't worry about resilience. Maintain your fatigue. Now, I know I'm coming off obnoxious, but what I would ask you to think about is when you are working with people, think about what they're feeling. How do you counter it? If people are struggling, how can you get them to unstruggle it? If you get people who are feeling fatigued, how can you energize them? If you have people who are really feeling a certain way, ask them, what can I do? Now, again, I go back to motion creates emotion. We've got to have counter effects as leaders. I want to share something with you that I did the fourth quarter last year. And this is one of my favorite clients, a large credit union. And people were literally, fatigued and they were turning off their cameras. We were on a Zoom session and you could see people. And I think it was in December last year. Oh, at the end of the year, it's just one guy goes, it's just been so fatiguing, and he was struggling to keep his eyes open. So what I did is I just cranked music into the speaker, and I was using a mobile microphone, and all of a sudden the guy woke up, and I said, "Okay, I want everyone to watch this for about 5 minutes." And then I put on a video, and I'm famous for this with some of my clients. Two Irish boys passing a soda bottle back and forth, and the caption was, "When we get back in the pubs." And I'm looking up at the screen. I made everybody turn their camera on, and people were smiling and laughing. And then I put on a video of a young boy, Robert, who's got Down syndrome, who scored a basket, a 3-point shot. And not his team, but both teams carried him off the floor, carried him above their head off the floor. I mean, it brings tears to your eyes. One woman puts in the chat, she goes, "My God, I've never had so many emotions run through my body in such a short period of time." I said, "How do you feel?" And she goes, "Alive, energized." I said, "Yeah, more times than not, people don't fuel their own minds. They don't fuel their own minds positively." So, self talk, number one, think about self talk. Think about the things that you need to do to hustle and to be resilient. And how can I help my company? The last thing any employee, and it just kills me when I hear, water cooler Wally complaining about upper level management. The last thing anybody should ever want is their leaders or their management or their company to fail. That's the last thing they should want. If my employees can't stand me, I would share this with you that you have to really look at it from a standpoint of, if they don't like me, the last thing they should want me to do is fail. Really, what people should want is for management to make good decisions, and our job shouldn't be spent time complaining about management's decisions. It should be spent supporting those decisions, whether in agreement or disagreement. There's no time because if we hustle, I go back to that earlier story about the pub, and I go back to it in such a way that you know that when you think about the people who own that establishment, I would have been furious. If we're not hustling and someone else is hustling, we're losing business. If we're not resilient and we're acting fatigued, somebody who's resilient will win that business. That's the last thing any employee should want. Companies need to make money. Nonprofits need to raise money. So, what we have to do as leaders is get people talking, self coaching, number one. Number two, fuel their minds, have a video every single day, send out quotes, get them energized. Number three, motion creates emotion. I go back to my time at Evan New Johnson, one of my favorite times in my career. Those people, till this day, are special to me because they were willing to do some zany things, did no formal sales training or coaching, and our numbers skyrocketed. So, what we have to do is think as leaders, how do I get my people feeling and acting differently? Now, again, clapping hands, walking, high fiving people is not some magic formula. It gets people through the next hour. Call people into the office for the good stuff. Pull them out of their cubicle and say, "I need to see you right away." You know what goes through their minds? Uh-oh, what did I do wrong? And counter it. See, if we counter feelings, if we counter behaviors, and we create new habits, good things will happen. Let me know your thoughts. Put some thoughts in the chat. I'm going to end there. I just wanted to go about 20 minutes this early on a Monday morning. It's kind of a tag on to this past Sunday, and so it's one of those things that is really amazing to me that I'm hearing. People are constantly talking about how they feel and their fatigue. And again, I think it's real. And I think mental health is real. I think anxiety is real. I think depression is real. I'll share this with you. My wife, who's a physician, will often get people who aren't even her patients call and say, "Would you sign a note so we could bring our dog on the plane as a therapy dog?" Or friends or parents who will say, "Could you sign this document so my kid could get out of a class because, just for anxiety?" And my wife goes, "Well, I've never treated your kid for anxiety." And so what's happening now, and I've seen it at 3 different client sites in the last month or two, where employees are kind of grabbing a hold of, "I'm feeling anxious." So now people are grabbing stuff off the shelf and using it for their own personal excuse. I think we have the great resignation. I also think we have the great excuse. The people who are medically struggling with depression, anxiety, um, this is not meant for them. We as employees, we have to be resilient. We've got to help our companies make money. We got to toughen up because it's not a choice. I mean, if you're in a game, some sports game, can you imagine if a coach called a timeout during the NCAA tourney, brought his guys over, his gals, women over, and say, we're behind by 10 points. Just let them win. Oh, for Pete's sake, it's not worth the effort to try to come back. Just let them win. We are in the business of winning or losing. In business, there are winners and losers. It's a crass thing to share with people. And I remember somebody once said to me, but it's not all about money in business. I said, actually, it is, because without money, without profitability, companies have to lay off employees. And what employees won't do is walk out of the door and say, you know what, the company made a good choice laying me off. They're going to be defensive. They're going to say, look at what they did to me. They're going to play the role of victim, and they're going to be just like the people behind the bar who didn't hustle. And when you don't hustle, somebody's out hustling you. And again, we have to think about the balance sheet. We have to think about the profitability of the organizations we represent. Now, a lot of people immediately manically say, well, I'm not in sales. You don't return a customer phone call in customer service, you're affecting sales. You're the busboy in a restaurant not cleaning the tables, and someone looks at the restaurant and walks out, you're in sales. We're all affecting the bottom line somehow. So think about a group right now that's struggling that whether inside your company, outside your company. Think about what they would be like if they were resilient, if they were hustling, if they were high-fiving, if they were walking, if they were using motion creates emotion, if they were being called into the office for the good stuff. Would things change? Let me know your thoughts. I hope this is helpful. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.